Welcome to our greatest American art form.
The mixtape.
Now, for all of you kids who don't know,
Traditionally, a mixtape is a homemade compilation of media from multiple sources, recorded into a medium like a CD, a VHS, or cassette tape.
what we are presenting to you here is something we call Mixtape Therapy,
A collection of authentic conversations,
often wacky conversations,
inspired by what inspires us.
except instead of a cassette tape, we are bringing you a podcast
So just as you might share a mixtape, we share these conversations with you.
in the hopes that they spark a similar connection to the good old mixtape. Now, join us
for a little
for some
mixtape
Mixtape Therapy.
The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, "Sit here, eat." You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit. Feast on your life. Today, for Mixtape Therapy, we're going to be talking about this podcast episode between Rick Rubin and Jon Kabat-Zinn. And specifically, we're going to be talking about the poem Love After Love by Derek Wallcott, which, Scottie, I mean, should we read this? Should I read it? Should you read it? We might.
I would rather, you're probably better at reading. It's real short, so if you want to read it real quick, that'd be awesome.
Okay, so we can read this. Now, I'm introing it, but Scottie did bring this podcast to my attention, this podcast episode.
Well, let me say real quick, I think that me and you are always talking about this kind of stuff when we talk. And so things come up and we share things with each other, but it becomes this very we're co-working with the material that we get. So there's
True.
always feelings and stuff on the other side. As an example, Hannah's very familiar with this gentleman, and I didn't know who he was at all day before yesterday. You know what I mean? So
Not very familiar, but familiar enough. Jon Kabat-Zinn, for those of you who don't know, kind of think of him as the father of the mindfulness movement in the US, in that he brought mindfulness meditation to the medical field as a means of helping reduce stress among folks with all kinds of chronic medical issues. He has this whole program that he he has this whole program that he developed for the sake of reducing stress in people who have really, really stressful lives and very real medical conditions. This was a delightful chat between him and Rick Rubin. I think Rick Rubin is very much in the zeitgeist right now. People are talking about him, even though he's been around for a long time. Famous music producer, but also just kind of a soulful, thoughtful guy who himself has a pretty dedicated meditation practice as well. But let's start off with this poem, because this is going to set the tone, I think, for the rest of Scottie and my conversation. This is also something that we talk about a lot, but I'm excited to see where the conversation's going to go. So this is Love After Love by the poet Derek Wallcott. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, "Sit here, eat." You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit. Feast on your life.
all right, Hannah, what are your feelings about that poem?
Well, on the outset, this is something that I think about a lot, and I think we've talked about a fair amount on this podcast. I think the ostensible interpretation of this poem is when love has ended in some way. This really does seem like a post-breakup kind of story, right? It's what do you do in the shambles of a breakup, like when you are truly suffering after losing someone, and the only action, the only direction that in my experience has ever led anywhere that feels sustainably good and grounded is to come back home to yourself, which is an incredibly easy thing to lose in romantic relationships. It's easy to lose yourself in everything, actually. And to get right down to the deep parts of this, it's like, yeah, but who even is yourself? What does that mean? What does it mean to lose yourself? What does it mean to find yourself? Who is yourself? I was actually just talking about this with a friend the other day because she was saying, I'm going to turn 30. My identity is changing. I feel like my identity as a young person is I'm not young anymore, which Scottie will probably laugh at. I also laugh at that, right? I'm like, 30 is still pretty young, but I get what she's saying, right? It's like my identity as the young person is shifting. I don't really know how to feel about myself now that I'm in this other identity marker. And me being my annoying philosophical and somewhat depressed self, so I was saying, you're just yourself. There's nothing about you that's actually changing. Identity is all superficial. And what I mean by that is that anything that we typically conceive of as ourselves, right? Our job, our relationships, our age, our race, our socioeconomic status, right? All these things that we spend so much time and energy and focus on are actually have nothing to do with the self that is always there, the self that we can so easily lose track of, but is in fact always there and always waiting for us. And that self is identityless. So it's going to sound so like overblown and intense, but the self that is the true self, at least in my understanding and kind of in the ethos of this podcast conversation and many conversations about mindfulness and meditation, is that the self that is true is actually not unique to you at all. The self that is true, like the most essential part of who you are, is not actually unique to you. It is the timeless, limitless entity of awareness itself. It is life experiencing life. And that self is kind of common to all sentient conscious beings and is in fact the self that you can have the truest relationship with. Which so many directions we can go with this, Scottie, but I'm curious, do you have a felt sense of what your truest self is? And do you agree that it is not unique to you, that it is in fact this greater awareness, this less defined entity that is an intrinsic part of the rest of the world? Like, do you grok that, I guess would be my question.
I somewhere in the podcast when they're talking, I think if I don't want to misquote, but at some point he says, once you identify yourself as an individual, you're not recognizing the whole, in the sense of the way we connect and the way we are with other people. And so, it's funny because I looked at this poem totally different than you did. And like while you were
yeah, let's go there first. I want to know.
But I mean, it goes along with what we're kind of talking about, right? So the way I saw the poem is I saw the poem as someone that not lost a love, but they lost the love for themselves.
Hmm.
and they're showing back up for themselves. They're showing back up for the, the way they need to be and stuff like that. So they're re-greeting themselves. They're finding ways to be and say, sit here, eat. You will love the stranger who was yourself. You know what I mean? Like that you're rediscovering yourself and finding this wholeness and completeness, and I think that that when we get caught up in the identity of who we are and what the thing, what we, how other people see us and all the things that you talked about, we're really just pulling ourselves out of the present. Because if you're really present with yourself, a lot of that stuff really doesn't matter. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so it's funny that we're having this conversation this week, because across this week, I've had like a little bit of imposter syndrome and a little bit of like feeling like somebody might be judging me about like things.
Mm.
And I was like, God, like, where's that like coming from? Where is this coming from? And I realized that it's just phases. It's just flows of life where I'm not as confident about who I am as a person this week. You know
Yes.
what I mean? And I'm acknowledging it. I'm being aware of it. I'm recognizing it, but I'm also not going, that's who I am. I'm going, this is ever changing, ever flowing. It's who I am right now. And then who I am right now. And then who I am right now. You know what I mean? Like it's the moments that I stay in that make me who I am, not what I wear or what I own or how others see me and stuff like that. It's how I stay present that makes me the best part of this connected big world. Did that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, no, so it sounds like we are in agreement, right? I mean, obviously you sent this podcast to me. I feel like I've been babbling about meditation and mindfulness maybe for the past couple of episodes that we've done together, Scottie, because anytime it's so interesting / makes perfect sense, but anytime I'm really struggling with myself or struggling emotionally or struggling mentally, I eventually find my way back to some kind of meditation practice. Now, maybe this is a side tangent, but it's really easy to not meditate and to not cultivate this loving relationship with my true self when I'm doing okay, when like there's nothing that feels super bothersome to me. Really easy to forget about, yeah, coming closer to this true version of myself. But when I'm suffering, that's when I keep coming back. So as I've been in this more difficult season of my life right now, all of this stuff has been in the water for me. Like I've just been turning to a lot of these different thinkers and resources about what is the true self? What is the present moment? Are you in fact this separate self with this separate identity, or are you part of something greater? Can you tap into something a lot larger than yourself? So I don't remember where I was going with that, other than to say, I think there's something that we miss when we're doing okay, when we're not actively struggling with something painful or some kind of mental health issue, that it's just so easy and comfortable to default back into being a separate self. And being a separate self, by that I mean, John Kabat-Zinn mentions many times the personal pronouns I, me, mine as the most, probably like the most commonly used pronouns in the English language. We're always talking about myself, me, my thing, this thing, always kind of self-directed. And that it's super cozy, I think, to default back into our little identities, right? This is what makes me different. This is my job. This is my thing. And then kind of come into this place of more self-absorption. But that is, in fact, kind of the root of so much of our unhappiness, which is really, it's easy to forget that when you're just going about your life and you're chugging along, doing your thing, going to work, blah, 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 like not in a place of deeper reflection about who you are and what it is to be alive. I've just realized that in myself, that then, yeah, if I'm like doing okay mentally and I'm just chugging along, I let all this stuff just fall off. Like I just don't remember any of this really powerful, really potent philosophy around what does it actually mean to be in the present moment, living life right now. I feel like I'm babbling, Scotty.
No, no, no. I think you really did a great job of wrapping up what I was kind of saying earlier, which is like, how you view the world as, is it happening for me or against me? Am I with the collective or am I different against the collective? Right? Shapes how your experience is. And in really a short sentence, the more you're connected, the better that experience is, right?
Yeah.
So you go, okay, how do I make these connections happen? Well, you make those connections happen by being and knowing your true, authentic self and who you are. That's how you make those authentic connections, right? And so when you were talking about, you know, that I only worry about meditating or these practices when shit's going bad, it's kind of like, and for me, it's an analogy like this: like your brain is like your garage, okay? And so in order to store stuff organized and stuff like that in your garage, you got to clean out your garage pretty regularly, right? Here's the only problem is every day that you're alive, there's somebody at your garage door trying to put shit in there that is not yours. They're like, here, hold this riding lawnmower for me. And that riding lawnmower is like the issues with their parents or whatever, you know what I mean? And so the world is going to bring stuff to your garage and want to put it in there too. So if you're not sorting your own stuff out and you're not sorting out the stuff out of the garage that doesn't belong there that the world is bringing, your garage is going to feel pretty full. And then when someone brings something over, or if you actually need to store something that's very, very important, your anxiety, depression, all that stuff goes up because you go, oh my God, I don't have any way to kind of store this.
Mm.
Right. And so what I thought was really great, what I thought that one of my biggest takeaways from the podcast and even kind of from the poem is that like meditate, like, and he even says this, meditation is not just sitting in the middle of a dark room by yourself, like not talking to anybody. Like he had a meditation practice that he did before he got out of bed. He had a meditation practice he talked about like he does at another time. And then he goes, there's meditation practice I do with a bunch of people. And he goes, and then I do it with one, I do it by myself or I do it with one person. He was like, there's all these different ways to practice meditation. And I think he's realized across his time that just the ability to be and sit with yourself and just be with yourself is a form of meditation.
Mm.
Some people do that through music. Some people do that through silence. Some people do that through group prayer. It's done in all these different ways. But even inside of a prayer, a Christian prayer is a moment of sitting with yourself and just being there with quote unquote God and what you're saying and doing. And so I don't know how often you've prayed, but I've prayed before where I'm praying to God. And at the same time, I'm like, I wonder if I turned off the micro, like if the oven's off, you know what I mean? Like I'm not even inside my prayer. I'm not totally there. And so the practice is really just being with yourself with whatever you're doing. And that becomes a form or a slight form of meditation based on kind of like what I was hearing him say.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh man. This is such a huge, I say this so often, Scotty, but like this is such a huge topic. There's so many places we could go with it. But can I just ask, what is your relationship with meditation?
I find myself seeking just time by myself. And that's a really new thing for me. I didn't always do that. And I think that the reason I didn't do it before is because everything's fine. Like, I mean, like I'm fine. Like I'm not strung out on drugs. I'm not homeless or anything. And so like everything's fine, but everything wasn't fine. You know what I mean? I was taking on so much because of the type of person I am. And I couldn't be good for other people because of the kind of person I am. I'm carrying load from myself and others. That's just how I operate. So I have to be aware of that and take care of that. And so my relationship with meditation is, you know, a certain section of my workouts every day has a meditative element in it.
Mm.
When I'm able to go to like a basketball court and there's nobody else there, and I'm able just to kind of like just think as I kind of dribble around and shoot some, that's meditative for me. The time I spend in the morning before anybody else gets up, even maybe doing like a little bit of work or just kind of checking emails and stuff is sort of kind of meditative because I just get to be with myself and really think about how do I want to be in the next 30 minutes to hour to day to week to month and point my ship in that direction and go, this is the direction I'm choosing. If it foresees that we need a better direction because there's a storm coming, then we change directions. And I think that's kind of maybe, I don't know if this is on topic or not, but I think a lot of people, we pick a direction and either we need to be right or we're so sure about it that we're willing to go through a storm and take the chances of wrecking the whole thing just to come out on the other side and go, look, I defeated the storm. And you're like, well, you didn't even have to. You know what I mean? Like you didn't have to defeat the storm. Like there was another way, or just having the awareness that you can change your mind or change directions. And I think we get so stuck up in being right and stuff like that we lose our lack of presence to go, I can change my mind. We're so far forward that and so a lot of what I do to wrap this all up, a lot of what I do to take care of myself is to keep that level of awareness. And they talked a lot about this in the podcast too, that something that wasn't talked about before that is really hot now is just your own awareness.
Mm. Mm. Okay. Can you ground what the last thing you said in an example? Like when you said, you said something along the lines of like pushing through a storm, but you didn't have to push through the storm. Can you tell me, like, can you ground that in maybe an example from your own life, just so that I have a better idea of what you mean by that? It feels important.
I think, stubbornly, self-sacrificing from maybe like a victim or even kind of covert narcissist of that, like I point myself in a direction and this thing comes up that makes it difficult. And instead of going, I can change direction, I go, oh, no, I'm already on this path, so I have to do it. Like I've already made this decision. And like not even acknowledging, oh man, like this, I don't know if this is a good example, and this is probably gonna be really stupid.
That's right.
But like, there's part of me that like, if I'm doing something and it's uncomfortable and I could make a change to make it more comfortable, but it required just me doing this simple task and I just don't want to do it. Like I'll stubbornly just keep doing it the same way instead of just like walking over and like turning the light off instead of, like the lights bother me. And I'm like,
yes,
the light's just on, like it'll be fine. Like, you know what I mean? And I literally could just go over and turn it off. Like it's like that easy, but I just work through it because I'm like, I don't want to turn the light off, which is so dumb. But like, there is a level of like in that moment going, like, why won't you turn the light off? And just turn it off. Like, and just going, yeah, like I can turn it off. I don't have to tough through this moment of like the light being too bright. I just turn it off. And like, I do that on small levels. I do that on big levels. And when it's done on like a really big level is when you make a decision about something, like you like say, you're going to break up with your boyfriend. You're not going to listen to anything he has to say. You know what I mean? And then he says something in the process and you go, shit, maybe I should listen to what he has to say. But you've already made the decision. So you go, I'm not going to listen to what he has to say. And that's just such the lack of presence in that moment.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah. You're so stuck in your own story and in your own viewpoint.
Yeah. And you're so far ahead of the scenario that you're already broken up that you're not willing to be present in that moment and actually maybe save the relationship, fix the relationship, or leave the relationship in a better place because you weren't ugly or rude or didn't have to like kick the door in as you go out. Like, you don't have to do any of that stuff. You treat that person with grace and kindness because you're able to be present about what's being done. And I think a lot of times when we have to make hard decisions, we do that. And then we go, oh, this is just a hard decision, but it didn't have to be that hard, you know? And I think it's just, it's a nature thing with us. And like, I'm sure as a therapist, you probably see it a lot. As a coach, I see it a lot. It's some of the things that holds our clients back. But there is like literally nothing I can do about it, because when that moment happens, you have to have the presence and awareness to go, that's not a good decision for me or the person or, the situation I'm in,
Yes. Yes. Well, oof. I mean, there's so many ways to relate this. So, okay, because of my current mind climate, the climate in my mind is rough these days. But what's so cool about it, and it's getting better. Update, it's getting better. But what's so cool about it is that if I veer far away from the present moment or like the next 5 minutes, I quickly start to freak out. Now, this is kind of cool in a way, because all the great masters, including John Kabat-Zinn and Rick Rubin, we're all talking about, like, we're really championing the present moment as this magic place to be, that, oh my God, we are like almost never freaking in the present moment, right? Like most of us are just never there. Even I, not even I, but like, even as I'm reading all of this stuff and like drilling it into my mind about being present, it's still like so rare that I can be in the present moment. But when I start to drift away from the present moment, I quickly get really distressed. Like I can feel my anxiety just spiking. I can feel my body tensing. Like I'm very sensitive to not being in the present moment and how distressing that feels. And so it's been a tremendous exercise for me in being present and realizing that there's actually, like, to Scottie's example of like, oh, I'm going to go in and here's what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to listen to any resistance. It's like the mind, or the presence of mind that we have when we're making plans and executing them it's not the same mind that is in the present moment and responding authentically and genuinely to what's actually happening. Now, I want to honor the fact that my field of work, right? It's like, I know planning is important, right? Planning and executing and anticipating, right? I know those are really important mind faculties, and in other professions especially, that's really important. For my job as a therapist, though, I have found, there are some things I kind of have to plan a little bit. But what I found through trial and error is that when I come in, maybe I have somewhat of a plan, but I'm just going to sit there and be incredibly present. I am 100 times better at my job than when I go in and I'm like pushing some kind of agenda from my lens of what I think this client needs or what this client needs to hear. Because even if I'm like right on some level, it's like my quality of presence is really diminished. And people can feel it. And I think there's just something so much more, powerful about actually being present and being willing to relinquish your best laid plans and being willing to relinquish your point of view if the moment moves you to. It's also just a much cooler way to go through life, right? As opposed to just like seeing your day out before you being like, I'm going to do this, and I know exactly how it's going to go. It's like, oof, right? Again, so in my current mind climate, when I think, if I even just think about like the next couple of hours, I'm like, it's like really overwhelming and gross. Like after this, I have 6 clients in a row, which is tough. That's like a tough day. If I think about that, I will freak out because I'm sensitive right now. But even if I were doing well, that wouldn't serve me to be like, okay, so I have this client, then this client, then this client, then this client, and then I'm going to do this. It's like, that's not actually a very creative or enlivening way to see your life. But I think so many of us do that. We look at our day and we like play through the whole thing in our mind and we're obsessing about what's coming next, as opposed to like, after this, I'm like, you know what? After this, I'm probably going to like do something. I'm probably going to eat something, and then I'm going to right? And like being just like in these little micro moments instead of seeing my day as this like huge big thing that I think I know how it's going to go, because we don't actually freaking know how our day's going to go. We don't know how anything's actually going to play out.
Well, I think, and they said this also in the podcast, I think, when you are pressing your own agenda, you are going against the universe. Like
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
going against the flow, right?
Yes. Yes.
So if we think about anything that we do in life, walking, jumping, running, talking, speaking, whatever, when so like I have an agenda or a plan for the day, right? And sometimes the day tells me your plan is shit, and there's a different plan for today. And being able to recognize that I'm not going to be able to execute my plan for the day, and then there might be other plans for me today that are going to happen, and that I need to be as present as I possibly can to maximize the day that I did not plan, right? That makes a huge difference on how that day goes and then how my next day goes. You know what I mean? And for me, when the universe presents a day that is not how I went to plan, I always go, well, what is the universe trying to show me?
Mm.
What am I trying to receive today? I'll give you a quick example. I won't make the story long. Long story short, I went to go do a podcast somewhere. My truck broke down, and I really thought that I wasn't going to be able to do the podcast. Like I thought it wasn't going to happen because, my truck and the whole situation. And so in that moment, I told myself, I go, maybe today's not about me doing a podcast. Maybe today's just about me learning to control anxiety and how to handle situations and how to handle a day that doesn't go. Maybe that's what today is about.
Love that.
And be present with what was going on at that moment. And as soon as I did that, everything released off my body. And then I recorded one of the best podcasts I've ever recorded.
Yeah.
Right? Because I let the universe present things to me. And then I made decisions based on what the universe was. I made my best decisions in that moment based on what the universe was giving me. It's kind of like if you were faced with a scenario which you had a bad choice and a really bad choice, what choice would you make? Like on any given day, if you were to make a plan and someone told you, hey, today you're going to have to make a bad choice or a really bad choice, you'd be like, I don't want to make either one of those choices. But like on that day, you have to make the best decision for that day and for your future of one of these bad choices. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so that being present is a lot about making the best decisions in the moment, given what you have. And it might not always be ideal or perfect. And most of the time, it is not ideal or perfect. It's just the best answer in that moment. And so you said something, correct me if I'm wrong. Did you say like, it's hard for you to like practice this meditation and be present at times, especially like, you have to be like hour by hour. And that's what you said, right? Roughly?
Yeah, I mean, the being present is easier when I'm struggling, because I find that the present moment is the only safe place for my brain to be when I'm struggling. So I will, right? Because I'm a human, I will go forth and like, hopefully you're a human, you understand what this is like, right? When you just start to think about like, oh, this, and you like future trip into the rest of your day. When I start doing that, I can feel in my body, my whole body freaks out. So I have to just be like, right now I'm talking to Scottie. That's all I know.
So here's another reason why meditation is so important, right? If it's just like working out, if you want to be present with other people and in your life, you have to practice being present. And the act of meditation is the act of being present, right? So that is your meditation is your weightlifting, you know what I mean? But you have to find what works best for you. And it has to be truly work best. So as an example of like one of my meditations is I listen to music, sometimes like classical music, and I'll do a lot of foam rolling and manual manipulation and stretching and stuff like that. And that's when I really like process things. Now I could show that to somebody else and they'd be like, that's not a meditation or whatever. But my brain just I at some points I'm like rolling around on this foam roller, and then I'm in like a position that like through the routine that I'm like I forgot about. I didn't even realize I'd done like 5 of them. And I had all the thoughts that went in my head. I was like, I don't even know what the fuck I was thinking. Like, I don't even know where those thoughts are anymore. And it's like that quick. And so I realized that like in that moment, I'm going through it, like all of it in that moment. You know what I mean? And that really helps me be ready when I come out of there to be good for other people. Or I've noticed that like I need a roughly 20 to 25-minute, what I would call a nap, but it's not really a nap because I lay down, I never go to sleep, but I feel myself going into like a meditative trance type space where I know it's daytime. I know that I have to work. I know this is short, but I know I'm laying down, you know? And I found that when I do that, like my afternoons go a lot better because I think I get overloaded in the morning with my brain with all my clients, and I need a deload like kind of after lunch. So I never really nap. I kind of trance every day after lunch, I feel like. And that's also a form of meditation. So it doesn't have to look like I'm sitting, Indian style in a dark room. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. I can't, like when people go, I can't do it. I'm like,
Mhm.
that's crazy because that would mean you can't be with yourself.
Which is really hard to be with yourself, I will say though.
One, 100%, but it's not impossible because you do
Yes.
it all day long.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's not
Yes.
impossible. I'm just asking you to be more with yourself. And you should want to be more with yourself because that's what makes you feel better and whole and more complete and more connected and blah, blah, blah. And all that's everything we're talking about is about being with and good for yourself, you know?
Yes. Right. And this is where, I mean, something I've had to realize about meditation over the years and as I've gotten older is meditation, though, is not, I mean, we do it, right, because obviously there are benefits to it. Otherwise, why would we do it? At the same time, it's kind of this paradox because if you meditate just because you're like, I'm going to do this because X plus Y equals Z, if I do this, I will feel better. That's not a guarantee, first of all, right? Like you're not guaranteed going to feel better, especially after just like one meditation. But just in general, it's not actually about doing it to achieve a result. Because already you see the inherent paradox in that it's like you're doing something for the future as opposed to, no, true meditation is not necessarily about feeling better. It's not about alleviating a symptom, even if that is a side effect, but meditation is only about the moment. Like it is about actually experiencing your life as your life is happening. Which I don't know if that's making sense what I'm saying. It's like, yes, you do that for a good result, but it's not just like you're not just because like the whole point of it is to actually be present in the moment, which means, and I can vouch for this, some meditations will suck, by which I mean they'll be super unpleasant. You're going to be coming face to face with all of your anxiety. If there's pain in your body, you're really going to notice the pain in your body. If you have that annoying, freaking incessant thought, you're going to feel that. If you're pissed off at someone, you're going to feel it. The whole point is to bring awareness to all of that. And then once you bring awareness to it, you start to realize that all of these things that feel like problems aren't actually problems. They're just what is there in the moment. And that's actually what's so interesting is you're not solving problems. You're just bringing this kind, accepting awareness to what feel like problems. And then you realize, oh, this is just being alive and this is okay. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, I think there is no being present without awareness. I mean, like I feel like they're hand in hand. I could be wrong, but I feel like that the ability to be present is driven through your awareness and what you see and what you don't see and what you feel and you don't feel. It's everything. It's everything that's around you. Like before we get out of here, I wanted to ask you, so do you have your clients do meditative practices? Do y'all do you or I'm sure you encourage it, but do your clients engage in it?
Yes. I would actually like to do more of that. I would actually like to receive more training in meditation specifically for therapy. Um, but yeah, I mean, I have guided clients through meditations. And when there's a particular style of meditation that I really will just prescribe or send to people who are really going through something difficult.
And
So
so
yes, I
and
guess would
and
be the
so
answer.
when you actually have people do it, it's kind of like foam rolling. Like I can't get
Mhm.
anybody to do it.
Yeah, no,
Um,
no one wants to do it. And like I can't make anyone do it. Like
but
they're either gonna do it or not.
when they do it, do they see results? Like is it positive when you have them?
Yeah, especially the people who, without me bugging them about it, actually just maybe come to me and they already have a meditation practice. I mean, for those people, it's like they really notice the benefits.
Yeah, I was just curious because I do with my clients I do this thing called heart math, which
Mm.
is not it's not I mean I guess it's kind of meditative, but it's just to align your breath with your heartbeat. But it's also becomes a very meditative thing because there's this very deep breathing, right? And you're supposed to be sit still and be calm and like all this kind of stuff. And so I found that once I kick into the heart math and I do it for a little bit, all of a sudden now I'm in this meditative state and now my breathing is very regulated and I'm very calm. And I actually because I'm a nerd, I like checking my pulse afterwards and before and just seeing how the rest of my day goes and experimenting with that and then finding like, oh, it's better if I do it in the morning or I do it in the afternoon. And then I do that with my clients because they can do it with their phone. And sometimes I feel like when they get the data back immediately, it gives them more they feel more solid about it. But that's how I
Yeah, that's
kinda do
encouraging.
that's how I kind of do my meditative stuff with my clients is having them do this like heart math stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think anytime we can like measure the efficacy of something, right? It is helpful. Even if we're saying like, oh, you don't meditate for the results, you just do it because it's being alive. It's also super helpful to say like, oh man, they're actually like in the case of John Kabat-Zinn, it's like, oh, there are positive health outcomes for doing this. It's
Well,
cool to have those numbers.
I'm gonna back that up. You know, everything. Okay, I know that the majority of the stuff we do in life is because we for results,
Yes, yes.
but like that's not like why you lift weights, why you do meditation, why you do these things is not necessarily for the results, it's for the present.
Yes.
When I work out, I'm trying to be healthy for right now. You know what I mean? And my results are ever happening, ever changing. Like I'm growing. And so you know, I- sometimes people get stuck in like what you were saying, like I'm doing this to do this, I'm losing weight to do this, or
Right,
whatever.
right,
They're
right.
making stipulations, or there has to be, and goals are great. But at the same time, if you're not figuring out why or what you're doing on the way to that goal, what was kind of the purpose? What was the point? Like,
Yeah, I'm in a real love-hate relationship with goals right now.
sure.
We need to talk about that probably at another time, Scotty. But there's a book I haven't read yet, and I want to, and I think it's called "Stop Improving Yourself," and I really, I want to read that just because of the title. But yeah, because I think especially in America, we're like obsessed with goals,
Sure.
and I just think that can be a real double-edged sword.
All right. Well, it sounds like we might have an upcoming episode with this book.
Rapidly.
I mean, yeah, like because now I'm interested. You know what I mean?
All
Well,
right.
as always, everybody, thanks for showing up. Thanks for coming to Mixtape Therapy. And if you have something that's Mixtape Therapy for you, make sure that you let us know. Thank you so much, Hannah. So good seeing you. We'll see you soon.
You too, Scotty.
All right.
We
Bye.
will. Bye.